Morena koutou, and welcome to the extraordinary meeting today. Can I just call for apologies? I have Councillor Mike Long and Councillor Naoma Chase. Can I have somebody move they be received? Councillor Sutherland, seconded. Councillor Petty Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. And if I can just acknowledge online, we also have Ali Dunn, our Governance and Democracy Services Manager, and Philip Jones, our Independent Chair of the Audit Committee. Welcome. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest in regards to today's meeting? Right, reports. Item 4.1, the extension timeline for the long-term plan, and the reason for this meeting. So, Raj, you taking this paper? Over to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies. Just on the dot, I didn't open this with our karakia, so I'll offer our karakia first. E te whānau, whaia kia marama, kia whae taki e rautou e o mahi katoa, kia tū, kia kaha, kia horo te marino, araha atu, araha mai, tātou kia tātou katoa. For all of us, seek knowledge and enlightenment. Have purpose in all that you do. Stand tall, be strong. May peace be widespread. Let us show respect, love and consideration for each other. Amen. Right, Branch, over to you. Apologies.
Tēnā koutou. Thank you, Your Worship. To Your Worship. I'll take the report as read, but I just want to do two things. One is highlight a couple of paras or draw attention to a few paras. And then what I would like to do, Your Worship, is walk you through the timeline that I forwarded to the elected, and just talk a little about the timelines, and specifically, I guess, using that timeline to give better context as a reasons to why we are proposing to push the adoption to 31st July. Two paras that just draw attention to from the report is para 3.7 and para 3.8, where we've tried and explain, I guess, give some context as to the decision that we made to intention to defer the audit, and as a result, trying to bring the audit back in and getting the resource was a challenge for us, because what has happened through that process is the audit team was then pulled to do other audits. So we had to work with the auditors to try and look at a more suitable time to reschedule the audits for both the draft and the final. So that has impacted, I guess, the timeline and the reason for the report in front of you today. So now, looking at the timeline that I sent to yesterday, just want to highlight three things from the timeline. One is the adoption at 31st July. In the report that we tabled for at the last meeting, where the resolution was to go with an LTP, one of the reasons for one of the options where the relief was provided for us to defer the LTP for 3 months, that means adopt in September. And one of the reasons why we said that option was not preferred was that you would be required, if you do not change your rates installment, you will be required to set rates using the current annual plan and then set rates using the LTP in the next installments. And we felt that would create not just, I guess, one is a confusion from the ratepayer setting. I think the administrative nightmare that the team has go through in setting two different rates, and given this year's a rating valuation year. So that was something that we felt wasn't an option. So when we looked at extending the timeline, we were conscious that we didn't want to extend the timeline to a point that we now trigger that issue with us. So that's why the 31st July allows us, that's the last and last date that we had, allows us to adopt the LTP, pass a resolution for the LTP, and use that resolution to set the rates for the year. Yeah, that's installments. So we don't have to trigger what we call the Section 50 of the Rating Act if we do that. So that's the final date that we chose. So that's quite key to look at why we picked the date. The second reason for that date is if you're looking at the timeline that we have the audit timeline that's been put in blue that starts from June up to, and in a normal audit, standard audit that you do for an LTP, bulk of the work is carried out in the draft LTP. That means audit spans close to about 3 to 4 weeks auditing the draft, bulk of the work is done. Then in the final, it's just a change. What has changed from a consultation, and then they do the final audit. However, because we're going on the path of unaudited CD, a bulk of the audit is done during the final. Though they're doing a review alongside us, it's a review, not an audit, so bulk of it. That's why if you find that the length of time in the final, instead of being a week and a half or 2 weeks, it's now 4 weeks. So we have to factor that time in to audit. And also included in the final audit is 2 requirements of the audit. One is a hot review. You have to go through a hot review process. That's a requirement from the Auditor General. The others in discussion with Debbie, the audit director, is that there is another process to go through, which is called an opinion review committee. So whenever auditors issue a non-standard audit opinion, they have to go through another process. And it's their internal process to ensure that the audit director is proposing the most appropriate opinion or challenge the audit director as to why they're proposing a non-standard audit opinion. David highlighted to us that given the many councils have gone through the audit opinion, she thinks that most probably we will have a matter of emphasis as a minimum in our audit opinion. And the matter of emphasis, she says, could be in 2 areas. One, she says, the matter of emphasis on the Waka Kotahi funding, the NLTP funding that we yet to receive confirmation. It will get confirmation most probably September, October. Even though we have been in discussions with Waka Kotahi to get assurance or confidence on the 3-year block funding, we will not get confirmation until later in the year. So that will be a matter of emphasis because the revenue is significant. The second, she says, she didn't say we will, but she said potentially we could. That would be in the tree water space. So it all depends on the work that they do and whether what the matter of emphasis would look like in the tree water space. So given that we factored that time into the final audit, that's why the final audit is a lot longer than normally what it needs to be. And once we put that in, we felt we couldn't meet the 30th June deadline and we had to push it out to 1st of July. The other element we also have factored into that is that given bulk of the work is going to be done in the final audit, we needed to factor in time for the management team to receive the feedback from the audits and then respond to it and make those changes and then finalize. So there's another few more steps. So I generally to make sure they factor that in. And we had some good discussion with auditors to make sure that we manage that process well with the auditors and don't run a risk of not being able to adopt the LTP at 31st of July. So that's being well managed. The other thing I think draw attention to would be the consultation timeframe and the determination and the hearings. So given the LTP, we're not proposing to change the consultation timeframe. We want to keep it at 4 weeks as the Act proposed and required. There's an option for us to reduce it, but we feel that it's an LTP. The Act indicates that it's 30 days, option for us to reduce, but there is a lot that's in the LTP that we want to talk to the community about. So we think by reducing it, it's not good practice for us. So that's why we kept it at 4 weeks. And then we have to ensure that we have the 2 other key parts of the consultation, which is the hearing, and then ensuring the staff have got ability then to pull everything together for the determination, which will bring a paper to council to seek direction from you in regards to what are the changes that we want to put in the LTP following the feedback from the community. And that flows through the whole document. So factoring all of these elements in working out a time frame that staff can manage and deliver and work alongside the auditor to deliver as well. That's how we push the time frame from the 30th of June to 31st of July.
Thanks, Raj. Does anyone have any questions? I have got one. Raj, does that change the cost of the audit at all?
Don't change the cost of audit. I believe Debbie, when she presented in one of the workshops, she talked about the unaudited CD and audited CD. There's a slight difference, meaning a lesser increase in audit fees for the unaudited version, but us extending this time frame doesn't impact the audit.
Councillor Gilmore, then Councillor Woods.
Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. Thanks, Raj, for that information. Just having a look at the recommendation to extend for 3 months. Totally agree with what you were talking about, that it would be undesirable to have to use Section 50 of the Rating Act for all of the reasons you outlined. Is there any reason why we couldn't formally resolve to extend just until the 31st of July? And the reason why I say that is intentions are great things. My preference would actually be resolving that is how long we're extending to, not until September.
The recommendation, it's adopting in 31st. So the recommendation is not going for 3 months. It's adopting the LTP on 31st July 2024.
I just wonder through your workshop that we change the word intended, change it to that we will adopt.
Yeah, just take out the words noting its intention, so it would read to adopt them or something on the 31st.
Quick follow-up, if that's okay. Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. My personal view is that would be much tidier if it just had that council adopts the option for extending the statutory deadline until the 31st of July 2024.
Brian makes a comment, then I will flick to the chair of audit and risk.
I'm just thinking that the options that was provided through the legislation was to extend it by 3 months. So we're choosing that option, as outlined in the changes that were made. We've just said that we will adopt they both carry the same weight, but I think it just makes it clear which option we've actually gone ahead with. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule around this, but it was just clear which option we have chosen out of those.
I just defer, Philip, do you have any follow-up on the matter that's just been raised?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mayor Tracy. I just agree with the Chief Executive's comment. I think we do need to put the extend to 30th of September, taking that option in the resolution. And I think while it's all very well to, with the intention of adopting, putting a hard and fast date of adopting by 31st of July, putting my experience with audit in front of council, the issue is there might be 1 or 2 days delay. And the question then I have for the Chief Executive is what happens if we have done our best, but audit take another couple of days to get the audit opinion through, and we actually adopt by the 1st or 2nd or 5th of August? Does that actually give us any potential grief? Do we actually then have to come back and revisit this resolution again because we've actually put a resolution, it's hard and fast, we're going to adopt by 31st of July. I hear the councillor, very much so, yes. We need to put a line in the sand, and that is our, and we will work towards that date, but sometimes things are beyond council's control. Just want to ask the Chief Executive to comment on that.
Through your worship, I personally think either way, if it was the word intention and if we were hard and fast, I think we would come back to council with that delay in it, because we'd need to outline probably when and the impacts of those delay and I guess the other aspects around Section 50, I think it was, that would need to be invoked as well. So I think we would, if we couldn't make it, need to come back to council.
Right. Understanding I do have councillor Wards and councillor Wallace and now councillor Johns in the queue, but I'll just defer back to councillor Gilmore.
Thanks, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, it'll be my last question. It's a direct follow-on from that information. If that is the case, that we can't have a hard and fast rule, and we run the risk of invoking Section 50, which was kind of deemed to be undesirable, and we didn't even give it some consideration. I guess my question's a little bit more simple. Do we still have the ability to defer the long-term plan and complete an enhanced annual plan, which means that we don't have to choose an option that actually no one wanted, which is the option that's been presented?
I defer that to, I'll go Brian, and then if you've got any comment on that, Raj or Philip, my understanding is no, but I'll.
Just taking a moment, just.
Can I assist, Mr. Chief Executive, or before Raj?
Yeah,
The legislation that allows us to do the LTP deferral, council must resolve by 30th of April to do that. So that's your hard and fast. That is a hard and fast date. You've got the resolution has to be passed by council by 30th of April. That's the way I've read the amendment to the Local Government Act. Maybe Raj can confirm that.
through your worship, so if that was a direction that was changed by this council, then, you know, we would have to pivot again to do that, but that does cause a considerable amount of work. Since the decision has been made, we have been full steam ahead to produce this LTP. There will be auditing implications. We would probably have to pay for the auditors that are here now or about to be here now, would need to pay that fee. Yeah, of course, staff would have to from the CD prepare a new annual plan. So there's a fair amount of work, but if that was a decision, we would have to do that. So it's just that, yeah, of course, there's some implications quite serious regarding that at this point. A lot's been done in 17 days.
To your worship, Chair Auditors did raise a good question in terms of, I guess he's drawing from his experience, and we are also drawing from experience in working with the auditors through this process. And I think that's how, when I talk about the timeline and having the 4 weeks in the final, we have talked about that to say how much time would be required, well enough for the auditors to start and complete their work, and what they're doing now as part of the interim. So we have to explore that risk, that what if able to meet the 31st of July. So we have talked a fair bit with the auditors, and we shared the timelines with the auditors as well to say this is what we're working towards. The risk is still there, the unknown as to when we're going through the process, and are there any issues? But I think that's something that we are conscious of in managing it, and we factored that little buffer in to the process. And like what Brian has said, if during the process, if there is quite early in the piece, we identify that the audit will not be able to finish, then I think our first approach is trying to manage that and meet that timeline. Second, if not able to, then we are bringing it back to council to see. So I think the intention for us is to meet that 31st July timeline, given the risk that we don't want to trigger section 10. Yeah. The other tools in the toolkit for us to do that, but it'll be quite late for us to trigger that now. The other toolkit is we look at the dates in which our installments are being struck. So that'll give you the time, because why it triggers the Section 50 Act is the rating act is quite clear that you must give the ratepayers 14 days upon receiving the invoice to make the payment or the rates due. So that was a critical part. That's why when you strike the rates resolution, that's when you actually can issue the rates invoice, and the rates installment is due on end of August. There's an ability, some councils have done that. There's an ability for you to change your rates installment dates in this, but we're not proposing that.
Thanks, Raj. We have a motion here, so I do note and I understand the feelings. I'll add you to the list, Councillor Sutherland. I do understand the feelings, but this vote went before audit and risk, and it also went through for a full council. So I'll let this motion go, and then if that is lost, then we'll come back. Right. Can I move? I'll go Councillor Wards, then Councillor Wallace, Johns, and Sutherland.
So let me just clarify that last comment, Mayor Tracy. You want to put the recommendation and then debate it, or because?
Oh, sorry. Okay, look, I'm happy to do that. I was just taking questions before we put the motion, but if you prefer to do that, we can do that now.
I'm stolen question
Yep.
mode as far as I'm concerned.
No, that's exactly what I'm doing. Just we'll have
Okay,
that.
so thank you, Mayor Tracy.
You might be sorry.
Some of my questions have been reflected on. I'm greatly concerned that we're now looking at a third option within a fortnight. And the last debate, and I appreciate what you're saying, Mayor Tracy, we were strongly advised to do one thing by our CE and obviously with the backing of the staff, and we're back to an option that we hadn't debated. Now, I'm all for helping to manage the risk, and if I'm a little bit concerned, Raj, what I heard from you this morning and read into the document. We're now adding in more risks into a tighter time frame than either of the options we've discussed previously. I'm with you in terms of auditing, but we do have a track record, and obviously Philip has a track record as well, where we've been seriously let down by the commitments. So I'm a little concerned that we're trying to add in an auditing framework of 4 weeks on something that they'll be auditing that still has so much uncertainty in it. I was going to dig deeper into what intention means, but I think that's probably been covered off, because I don't want us to be sitting here in 3 months' time and, we're looking at another resolution of shifting a time frame again. So I beg to debate this particular recommendation, and since we're in rescinding motions, enhanced annual plan comes to mind, but I'll leave that till the vote comes around then. Thank you, Mayor Tracy.
Through your worship, and to Councillor Walter, yeah, you raised some valid points in what you said, but I think the reason why we did do that shift has largely been around the availability of auditors, and at the time of presenting the report, we didn't know that availability. So once we sat down and rebooked them in to find out when they can get here, we were hoping that they could get here a bit earlier, but unfortunately they've been committed elsewhere, and hence the reasons for the delay around that timeline. But you're right, there is a lot of information within our LTP that's, that we don't have confidence in. But I know, speaking with just this week, other CEs within our region, it seems to be a common theme with LTPs this year as well, where there's so much uncertainty with them, with the changes to government and changes around other decisions still to be made. It's been widely discussed that this LTP, and I can't speak on behalf of all the other councils, but there is a fair bit of uncertainty and less confidence in what we would all like to have.
Philip, understanding you need to go shortly, do you have any final comments around the risk or the extended annual plan?
It helps if you unmute yourself. I just endorse the chief executive's comments. This is probably the most uncertain LTP that I have ever been involved in since 2004. because of all the changes that are required, all the external uncertainties that we have. But I am still of the opinion that those risks may not be mitigated by the end of this calendar year, in which time we would actually need some certainty for to defer the LTP. And I think the LTP, by deferring it for another year, does actually potentially create additional problems that we haven't actually fully investigated because it hasn't been done before. And that's my summation. And yes, thank you, Mayor Tracy. I do need to leave.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us briefly this morning. It's been appreciated. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Wallace. Patiently.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Tracy. Yeah, I look at this like Cyclone Gabriel. We don't know what's in front of us, and we dealt with that. We dealt with the 1970 odd earthquakes. We rebuilt. This here, I've spent lots of time on this, like the other people around this room, and you think, right, we've put something to bed. Guess what? You wake up in the morning and all the blankets are ripped off you. And I think, now, why did I waste any time and debate? And I'm very good at what I do in my profession, and I'm hopefully looking around this room, and the people that are in their profession are good at their profession, i.e. chief executive down in the corporate bodies. But I do think, I am absolutely perplexed about why we come here. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Councillor Wallace. Councillor Johns.
I'm happy with the recommendation as it stands. It may be that we can adopt it at the end of August. We don't have to wait till the end of September if it works out that it's possible to do so. But in any event, we've got time to the end of September to adopt, and I see nothing wrong with the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. The intention is still to adopt by the 31st of July. Thank you. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mayor Tracy. Just to comment to Peter, there are significant rating issues if we do that, Peter. If we go over that deadline, and quite significant rating issues. So, I mean, everyone here knows my view, which was quite strong, and it was defeated. That's okay. We move on. I still felt that was a better course, but I'm big enough to go. We went down this track, and I do take Brian's comments. I did listen to Sharon and Scott, but I think the few weeks that have gone past have made it really difficult to move that. I do think that would be cost. So I'm probably in favour, mainly because time's beaten us a little bit now. And I've just been reading other councils' views. There was a dozen councils roughly that went for the long term, but there's been even more confusion reading more recent discussions around New Zealand with councils. There's an incredible amount of confusion about, and some of them disagree and quite differently about what's the right and the wrong thing, and what the effects might be. So it is a bit confusing. But a couple of questions. We really, just to Raj or Brian, we went to the unaudited consultation document, didn't we? Right, and that's off we went. I'm actually quite disappointed with audit. It's not the first time. I mean, your comments here, Brian and Raj, that they took a different view because we were going to discuss extension. Well, we hadn't made a decision, so that may or may not be true, but I'm $1 each way with that. But however, be that as it may, so Section 3.7 is that we're going to have 2 weeks for the review of the consultation document. So So maybe I may have the wrong end of the stick a little bit. So we were going to, and when we made the decision a few weeks back, we were going to go for the unconsulted consultation document. Now we're going to extend, we're going to go to option 5, which is okay, but we're now going to do 2 weeks of consultation document. So if we go to, if we go to that one, does that force the consultation? Why can't we just get the hell out of Dodge without a consulting on that consultation document and then spend all this time on the LTP, which we have to do, which is mandatory? Am I missing I might be missing a big chunky. I'm happy to be reprimanded.
Good question, Raj.
Good questions. I'm looking at the paper, the unaudited options, and one of the bullet points that we talked about, and Debbie did mention a presentation, is that the audit will sit alongside and review the underlying information in CD, even though it's unaudited. And I think we also chose that option as well, and prefer that option, is that gives us some level of assurance that we have the auditors sitting alongside us and looking at the key underlying informations and review the CD and provide some feedback to us, so that when we go out to the community, it has been reviewed, not audited. So remember, it's still not audited. So that's the process that Debbie presented to you. That's the direction OAG has given the auditors, to say that if council have chosen an unaudited path, do this option, review the underlying information. And reason why that is important for us from a management point of view, and Sharon talked about risk, is that the risk is that, just imagine this, we didn't have an audit of LTP, of the CD. We're going out to consult, we consulted, we now are finalizing the LTP. Auditors are coming in to audit, then they say, council, having a look at your documents, you should have disclosed and consulted these key elements with your community. So that is a risk for us. That's why OAG suggested auditors do that, and we picked it up as well to say that it's good to have the auditors alongside us. They're not auditing, they're reviewing, they're giving management and the governance team some assurance that the CD and information going out to the community had a level of scrutiny, not an audit, level of scrutiny. Then when they come back to do the final audit, that's why they had the 2 weeks in the draft. That's why you could see the 2 weeks in the draft that they're doing the review for us. Then they come back and do the official audit as part of the final audit in June. Yeah. So that's why there's 2 phases. And to me, it's, if I take my own personal preference, I think there's value in you talk about risk, that takes some element of risk, help manage to make sure that what the document that we're taking out to consult with the community has got a bit of rigor in it. Management is doing the rigor. We are going through the process and ensuring the document is robust as we consult. But having an independent eye on it has got value, and the auditors provide that value.
So it will still be an unaudited CD.
As a kind of unaudited CD.
That Councillor Sutherland.
Discount version. I'll
The word discount and audit don't go together. Raj, and then I'll.
And one more, Mayor Tracy, I had a discussion. I just can give this context whenever that's going to help, is that I sense the frustration that we've got a resolution and then we're coming back with another one. The resolution is still an LTP. We're still doing an LTP. This is just saying that the 30th of June timeline that we had then, just pushing it up because of the decision that we made, management decision that we made too, and then audit availability to come back and do what's required. So it's still an LTP, just the timeline of adoption has changed from a 30th of June, 31st of July. Maybe that context it.
Councillor Franklin and Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Your Worship. I printed the document off because I wanted to be sure when I arrived today that I had my head around it, because at the last meeting, I actually honestly admit I got completely and utterly confused. So when this started now, I'm thinking, so I wrote down on the original document, this was the original decision, this was what we wished for, this is what we got, and now it's changed again. So I think I can be forgiven for being confused, because actually it is extremely confusing. And we've sort of gone out and from the last meeting thinking of one thing, and now we're back and we're in the 30th of September, which actually wasn't even on the cards at the last meeting. So just making apologies for my loss of keeping track last meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Franklin. Councillor Wallace.
Two things first. Sorry for being late, and you're not alone. Going back to your sales of, you sound like a salesman then, Raj, and it was selling fear. What's going to happen if one of those two things do happen? Do you get your fingers cut off or what? You know, like when you said about the unaudited and this and that. You get into a language that I don't understand. I just want in plain English. You said, yeah, there was a whole lot of jargon there, and I'm just trying to get that in my head, what you're talking about.
I think the key thing here, through your worship, is, and I think if you didn't understand any of this, it would be the last sentence that Raj said that I think was pretty simple. All we've changed and all we're suggesting you change is the adoption date from the 30th of June. We're proposed to change that to the 31st of July. And if you forget about everything else and you can, other than that is pretty much what we're asking. And we've outlined a pretty comprehensive timeline to show you what's left to be done between now and the 31st of July to achieve that. And there's a fair amount of work in between that timeline. We cannot squash that between now and the 31st of June. And to be fair, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's the nut. I wanted to find out what that simple nutshell was, you know, and just simple layman's terms, because you're the expert in this field. I'm not the expert in this field. So you're saying that it's really, we just need more time, end of story, because of the law of the land or the situation we're in, because of the time that's involved in this unpeculiar year we live in. Is that it? I wish we had that in the first document.
Thanks, councillors. Right, we've got a recommendation on page 3. I am comfortable with the explanation given between, and I understand Councillor Gilmore, I always like a firm date as well, but actually I'm quite comfortable with noting the intention there as opposed to changing it to a definite 31st of July. So I'm happy to move the recommendation on page 3, 1.2, 1.1, 1.2 and 1.3 as they stand. Seconded, Councillor Johns. All those in favour? Right, thank you.
Sorry, point of order. Just Councillor Ward spoke before and asked if we were asking questions and then the motion would be put and would have a chance to debate the motion.
Sorry, didn't signal anything. Councillor Gilmore, would you like the motion is open for debate?
Happy to kick off. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't signal anything because I thought that's where we were going to jump to. There's a couple of things I want to quickly talk about with this motion. The first of it is, I don't think it is just as simple as the decision that was made, that was made and debated in order of risk in council, because what we're being asked to decide on is a different motion. So we're literally being asked to rescind the decision that we made in our last one. So I don't think it is as simple as that, and I do think it is worthy of some debate. I do have a couple of quick things I want to just mention that I've noted down. This does feel like a bit of a shambles. I have real huge concerns about the risk of needing to use Section 50 of the Local Government Rating Act if we don't hit that July deadline. And the motion, as has been moved and seconded, does give the ability to move past that, opening up our ratepayers to that risk. Assuming that there'll be a rates increase, the implications of that is that our rates will not be evenly spread to our ratepayers. potentially putting an extra burden on those who might already be struggling to have an uneven rates increase. So I just want to make clear that I will not support a motion.
Councillor Gilmore, can you just repeat, you made 2 points there, can you just repeat the second one for me?
Well, if we happy to clarify, the implications of using Section 50 of the Rating Act is that we would use last year's rates resolution to rate, which means that any rates increase would have to be paid in 3 quarters rather than 4 for our ratepayers, which I see as a huge risk.
Is there anything further? And Raj, do you want, hitting Section 50, everyone here understands that risk, and that was a key one for me as well. I guess it's just around, and I guess having confidence in the intention that staff have indicated that will not happen. And I am confident in that, but I also hear your concerns around that, because that certainly would not be something I would be at all happy with. Raj, did you want to make any comment on Section 50 at all?
Through your worship, and Councillor Scott is right, the implication, and we discussed that implication in the first report. We took out options why we didn't take that in September. And that's why in this proposal, we are saying is 31st July. So that's the time frame that we're working towards, 31st July, that will allow us to actually not trigger that and still have the resolution, strike the rates using the rates resolution for the LTP.
Councillor Gilmore, can I just check on the timeline that's been submitted by Raj to us via email? Are you comfortable with that timeline, or do you have any concerns in which particular areas?
Thanks for the question. I do have concerns about the timeline. I suppose I'm pretty new to this whole council of business, but I do reflect on our annual report, which we were waiting on audit and different staffing challenges that audit have. I'm also concerned about it. I mean, the Chair of Audit and Risk mentioned, and the Chief Executive mentioned, that this is the most uncertain LTP that they have ever seen. We are not the only council that has this, which will put extra pressure on audit, may take longer to be auditing things. My personal view is having that intention in there. I don't believe that we are going to be able to hit that date. I absolutely accept that it is our intention to do so. I don't believe that we will meet that intention.
Thank you.
You ask a question, I'm not sure it's been answered yet. Are you, both Brian and Raj, are you confident that we can meet that deadline?
Your worship, yes. Understand the challenges, understand the uncertainty, and that's why the conversation with Debbie, for example, if I give an example of how the annual report, its audit is different from a planning and LTP audit, is we talked about assumptions. So the first thing one of the first thing auditors look at is what are your assumptions around the uncertainties, and they challenge those assumptions. So if you're making assumptions about Waka Kotahi funding, they'll challenge assumptions. What are you doing? If then they agree with the assumptions, they move past that. If they disagree with the assumptions, so it's quite a different review than an annual report that is based factually on past. This is on councils working through the process with the auditors and telling them that this is our basis for making those assumptions that we build the LTP on. And this is where the uncertainty.
Yes, you're confident.
Yes.
And the chief, sorry,
Yes.
I'll note that. And that, look, the Philip Jones referred to 1 or 2 days. I don't have an issue removing the words noting its intention at all. Councillor Wallace.
Through you, Mayor Tracy, just a quick one. You referred to the fact because there's two different processes between an LTP and the local, the other one. I'm going to remember all these acronyms. It worked on assumptions and the way they're evaluated. So if you don't like what Wakataihi's going to do, your time's out the window, isn't it? Go back to square one. It could be Christmas.
Through your worship, no, what they decide to do is what that's it. There's nothing really to debate there.
That's my point through you, your worship. We just get on with it because we don't have to worry about that assumption, fear factor, or anything else that's going to happen. What's going to happen? Those guys down in Wellington are going to tell us what to do.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, I think everyone's pretty aware of the significance of going over the date as to rating. I appreciate Scott's comments about that. I'm quite happy with the resolution. I think I was just trying to find, I couldn't. I think the legislation, the repeal of that extension was quite specific, and going to the 30th September. I think I'm certain that it does. So I'm not too concerned about. I don't think wouldn't like us to see us change that to have to the 30th of July because it might contradict the legislation that was altered. It could cause us some hassle. So I know where we've got to get to, but I'm happy with 30 September because I think if we got rid of that date, we might be conflicting the legislation for that particular extension.
Raj, with audit, can you see any challenge if they looked at our motion, giving and saw that date versus planning their workload? Is there any risk there of them, perhaps putting another council ahead of us?
True, worship, just to make sure I understand your question, it's that if we in the resolution saying we're adopting by 31st of July, whether you think that there would be, the auditors would not be able to meet that deadline, 31st of July, and that's why we shared that. So in building this timeline and bringing it in front of you and doing the report, we have engaged closely with Debbie and had the discussions with her, and we have secured the resources, and that's how we pull the timelines together. So it's not that we've done the timelines in isolation. So we have secured the audit resources, and that's how we planned it. And we've talked about the time frame, the audit process that's required. We've put in a little bit of buffer in as well, and that's how we've pushed it out to the final date as of the 31st of July. So I'll repeat again, we have looked at the timelines. We understand what's required. We're working alongside the auditors. The whole management team is aware of the timelines, and we're confident that we will achieve, because we don't want to trigger the 50, and that's how we've done it. So we're confident we could achieve the timeline that's in the resolution.
Thank you. And look, it is an uncertain LTP in this uncertain time, but so is any other option. Is there any further debate before I put the motion, and I'll let it sit if in the noting that we'll leave it as stands as I've moved, and if that falls, we'll look to change the wording. The debate. Okay, so the motion was moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Johns. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
No.
Not against Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Wards, and Councillor Franklin, and Councillor Wallace. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So that motion is lost.
Sorry.
Sorry, I moved the motion, so I'll vote in favour of the motion. So 1.
Automatically under our standing orders, you have a casting vote.
I do have a casting vote. It's never a choice that I choose to make. But actually, I'm not going to, in doing the casting vote, the choices are going back to an enhanced annual plan and deferring the long-term plan isn't one of those choices. So councillors, I'm voting no, and I understand that was the decision that was made. I get the feeling that that's what you're wanting to relitigate as opposed to dates. Is that correct?
This is, sorry, Are you asking that? You want me to respond? Thanks very much, Mayor Tracy. I think under our standing orders, I'm not sure, but I think your casting vote's automatic. I'm not sure if it's a tied vote automatically. I don't think you have to cast it again, but maybe we can get some advice on that. Absolutely, I still support moving to an enhanced annual plan. I think it'd be inconsistent of me arguing so strongly for it to not be advocating for that still. But I just want to reiterate that actually the decision that we made in audit and risk and the decision that we made in council, we are being asked to rescind that decision. This isn't about carrying on with the decision that council's made, that the recommendation's asking us to rescind that and then look at another option. So I'm going into that paper saying that is still not my preferred option. My preferred option is deferring the long-term plan. So.
Brian, you can just comment. I'm sorry, I'm just still doing the numbers. Councillor Sutherland, you were for or against the motion?
For this.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for allowing me to speak at this stage of the process. I think every item you've got to take on its own in terms of what you're being asked for. At this table, the options are there in that report. And yes, there might have been other options provided in previous report, but each option should be dealt with on its own merits. I just want to point out that there's a risk thing here, and I know that the voting's already gone around, but the risk of not doing an LTP by that date, which is 30th of June currently, versus the risk of Section 50, blah, blah, blah. But they're all doable, to be fair. They're not ideal, but they're doable. But the risk of not being able, we've told you we will not be able to produce a LTP by the 30th of June. And let us be clear, the risks, in my point of view, of that far outweigh the risks of doing it to the 31st of July, pushing it out by.
Yeah, one writer replied.
What was the result of the vote?
Sorry, it wasn't all. I just redid the numbers. Chief Executive was talking. So in favour, we had Councillor Petty-Weber, Councillor Johns, Councillor Sutherland and myself. And against, we had Councillor Wards, Councillor Gilmore, Councillor Wallace and Councillor Frank.
That's your casting vote.
Us. We'll do that shortly.
Yeah, so that's right. It'll just be quite quick. I think then this is where some of this is getting a bit conflated, Your Worship, with the Chief Executive just mentioning that we're extending to the 31st of July. This resolution does not extend until the 31st of July. This resolution extends until the 30th of December with some vague intention to adopt by that date. That is a serious concern that I have in the wording.
That's incorrect. The resolution is very clear in front of you that it will be the 31st of July, was when I'm quite happy to take the word intend out if that is of the major concern here. You're not wrong in terms of Councillor Scott, in terms of the concerns you have raised, but I've made it very clear to staff that this is the priority and staff are working on this to meet those deadlines. Now, you know, and I respect what our Chair of Audit and Risk said around that you never know what's going to happen between there. And I understand that. You do never know, but whether or not that word intend or is in there or not, we would definitely have to come back to council either way to advise what the implications are and extend it beyond there if we had. I still stand by what I said, that not completing LTP by the 30th of June, which we won't because the audit team won't be able to do their job, far outweighs even doing a Section 50. And sorry, no, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, to follow on from what our CE is telling us, can you sell me the risk between the two by adopting and not adopting, just in a real short answer, not a big speech. Simple stuff.
We just won't have an LTP. So all the follow-ons that you've talked about with the Section 50 will happen because we'll have to continue on the current LTP. So the concerns that you have, you know, I'm assuming you voted against because of the concerns you had around Section 50, that will start from the 1st of July. And it'll be reported through. I'm pretty sure it'll be reported through to the government as well that we failed to meet that deadline to do an LTP, and not too sure what the alternates would be beyond that.
Councillor Wallace.
Yeah, thank you. So we all saw the bus getting to this point, it seemed to suddenly get here. You got to ask the question, yeah, this hasn't, we've all been on this road together, and now we're at a crossroad. It's like we planned to fail. We didn't fail to plan. We actually planned to fail.
Right.
We didn't plan to fail. That's I strongly refute that. No one wants to be in this position where we are, but I think we've spent we've provided a lot of information outlining the reasons why we're here now. And we're not alone. And that's what I'm saying, that there's been a lot of pivots and changes throughout this process that we've turned left and then right, and we're, you know, back down the middle again. And we don't want to be here. Staff don't want to be here. But this is what democracy is. We just can't crack on and make this decision on our own. This is your decision to make, and this is what your community voted you in to do.
And with that, I'll cast my vote and the user casting vote in favour of the motion so that we can. With that, also, if we can, thanks, Sarah and Ali. Right, thank you. And as always, the people that sit at this table do so representing their community, do so with the best interests of our communities and this council at heart. And the healthy debate is not a bad thing. We do find ourselves in some really challenging times where a new piece of information or something that's changed, as it did just last week from government, and I don't think it'll be the last one, does send us into some space. So I understand the frustrations being experienced, certainly not what anybody would want. Councillor Franklin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now that decision has been ratified, can I ask, is there a timeline for consultation? Is it set yet? I noticed Nigel said the 1st of May.
The timeline that Raj sent out, yes, from the 1st of May to the 30th of May. And I'm sure as well. Right, and with that, councillors, I will give a closing karakia and then we'll have a Kia tau te rangamairi, kia tau te araha, kia tau te whakapono, mauri ora, kia tātou katoa, haumea hui. Right. We can just stop there and pause it.